Well, this is the end of day 2. Here are all the lower sidewall panels. And here is the potty seat. Of course, you know the potty also serves as a jump seat. So on a short trip, you can put somebody in the jump seat. And here is the infamous divan with all the mildew removed and stripped and recolored. So this is the first seat that we tested, where we saw the finish bubbling up here. But as suspected, we were able to sand this with 220 after it had dried thoroughly, and this is all in good shape. Some of this original finish looks like it's in very poor shape. All of these cushions have the same problem. And it seems to indicate that this finish is rather old. It has a lot of hours on it, or at least it has a lot of time, maybe set in a very humid and hot environment. So this finish is not that durable. Certainly not strong enough to stand up to a solvent coating. And by the way, in the industry, when we say solvent coating, of course, water is the most popular solvent of all, but when we say solvent coating in this business, the term organic is implied in that. Usually we say waterborne or water-based when we mean water is the solvent, and when it's an organic solvent, that is a solvent with carbon in it, we usually just say solvent instead of organic solvent. Just to some of the terminology that's become popular, of course, in usage over the years in this business. So the solvent on this water-based finish was detrimental, but I think that originally that this finish was not that durable. And I see some blue in here. I see some hints of maybe a primer, somebody's done something in previous iteration of this. But we've let everything dry after stripping, and then we've sanded everything with 220 so that feathers the edges of all of our damages. And now we're just going to do a pre-color prep and a wipe-in color. And as you know, this makes it really sticky. And that's the advantage of doing a prep step right before recoloring. Of course, don't put your sweaty hands on it like I just did, because that's going to hurt. Now this color looks very yellow, and that is true with colors that are strong with yellow. They look extremely yellow while they're wet, but when it dries down, the yellow disappears. or I should say minimizes. So there is a wet look factor that affects the view of the color initially, which is why with our waterborne colors we always dry them down when we're testing them. It's important. Even on a humid day it can fool you, and you have to take a hair dryer or a heat gun and dry them down. So if we've mentioned in a previous video, here we're not wiping the color on, we're wiping the color in. We're getting it down into the grain of the leather. There's not much grain here, but what there is, we're pushing the color down in. Okay, so here is where I use 600 grit. And a little tack rag there just to get the dust off of it. And we're ready for another coat. So all that's left to do here is allow this to dry fully. We'll come back and put our finished clear coat on. In the meantime though, we're going to color the other cushions and have all 6 of the cabin individual seat cushions done. Day 3, stripping. Well, that's going to do it for day 3 of our project. We've got the 6 bottom seat cushions done, so that's a good milestone accomplished here for day 3. Here's our target color. So I failed to mention before that this particular facility is not one where I usually do business. It's been a long time since I've been there. So I think they've forgotten about my work in a sense. So they're getting to know me again with the work I do on this project. So we'll see how that works out for the future. Anyway, we have the drink rails next time. So this is the beginning of day 4. The armrest ledges have some damages. We've got this one here, this one here, this one here, and I guess that's all on those. And we're going to move over here to the seat that you saw before. My wife was in here peeling all of the sunburn off of here. And so we're going to have to start stripping on these seat backs. So we'll do some stripping along on these. And in the meanwhile, these repairs on the drink rails can be curing. And then they're already clean, but then we can be tidying the repairs, prepping, and masking. There's a nice clean seat for you. Not. Now there's supposed to be some plastic trim here around the seat belt, and you can see how the seat belt has been folded and recessed in there, but painted. You know, we don't paint seat belts. You can't get the color out of them once you get it in there. But then on this one, the seat belt's fully retracted. I don't know how to get it out of there, but we're going to check with the crew chief and see if they have a way of getting that back out of there, because the only other way I know, either take the seat apart or send a little light down in there with a probe and try to find it. It's another one that's folded over and painted. Not a good idea to paint the seat belts, guys. So we're getting the repairs done and we're starting to do the stripping. We've got stuff masked off so we don't ruin too much stuff while we're doing this. Alright, so that's going to wrap it up for day 4. We've got the drink rails finished, or the armrest ledges, whatever way you want to look at it. They're all ready to go. The only thing we might need to do is to detail them. I see a little bit of paint blow by right there. We'll take care of that. But that sort of detailing work always goes on with these at the very last day before delivery. And we managed to get 3 of the other cabin seats stripped. And they'll be drying overnight. The next 3 will be for tomorrow. There's some metal showing, so I'm just going to give it a little coat. So as you just saw, we had to touch up these black hinges a little bit. And the other thing that we failed to consider on these drink rails was when you pull out the tables, there's a little bit of leather that's showing here, so we're going to touch that up. Also these ends, and I bought some new cardboard today. We also cleaned up these recesses, which no one would ever see, likely, but to do the job right, you want everything to look nice and clean. There, so that's going to be done for each of the tables. The table color we've decided to leave as is. As you can see, it's a little different, but we decided just to go with that, and since they're in pretty good shape anyway. So we'll finish that out here. This is the beginning of day 5. By the way, I've run out of 220 sandpaper, so I had to cut some 400 in half. Just kidding. Day 6 is a wrap. We've finished stripping all of the cabin seats, and what's left to be stripped are these seat bases. And what's really curious is these bases have a lot of color on them. So these were likely the very first things painted, and they used a lot of color, but then ran out of color on the seats. In fact, these bases are the last thing to go in the plane, so these would be the last thing you would want to dye normally, right? That way the rails and the seats could all be installed if you needed a little extra time. While that's being installed, man, you can do the seat bases then if you needed to. Anyway, these are the final things I think to be stripped. And one interesting good feature that I saw in the seats, some of them have this blue repair material in them. And it's very, very good repair material. It's very good filler. It's very strong. And I'm actually quite impressed that it's that good. And it holds up to the lacquer thinner or the alcohol or even the strong degreaser cleaner. So it's a very good filler, and we've seen that in a couple of different places. Here's a little bit put in here where it didn't necessarily need to go, but anyway, that's pretty tough stuff, and that was a good highlight to see in this project. So we were able to clean most of this. There was some stripping to be done here. And of course, where there's lacquer paint on there and stripping to be done, that's where the coating, the original coating of the leather, is going to peel off and run through. But where you just do normal cleaning, you're never ever going to have a problem with the finish turning up like that and getting bald in spots. That's just normal procedure, and there's never going to be any sort of a problem. So these are drying right now. I can't really finish the prep on these until these are fully dried. And so anyway, that's it. Probably tomorrow we'll start in on the prep and some dye. Good news! Day number 8 has come to an end. And the stripping is also at an end. We stripped all the bases. We let them dry. We sanded with 220. We coated them, sanded with 600, coated them again, and have the clear coat on them. We've done likewise to all of the seats. They're all finished, minus some repairs. There's some small repairs that need to be done. But of course, we don't hold the whole project up just for the sake of a couple small repairs. So we have that to do and some detailing. We'll have to take off the masking and do a little detailing around there tomorrow. But we're getting close to the end of our project. Well, on day 9, we finished all of the repairs and all of the detailing. And now it's day 10 and we're ready for delivery. We have loaded up in the van currently the drink rails, which they're 11 feet long, so they take up the full length of the cargo van, and the cockpit leather, and what else is in there? Oh, the sidewalls. So all that stuff that has to go early is being delivered first. But we also plan on coming back and getting these seats today, so everything should be delivered today. Just to finalize everything, though, I thought that I would mention some bullet points that we would have learned from this project. And so I made a note of those. The first one was the importance of cleaning and prep. And we see that if we fail to clean, properly, then what we're working on will have a diminished value. In fact, this plane was grounded because the seats are not usable. So then, instead of going out there and diminishing the value of what we're working on by not cleaning and prepping, it would be better really to find a different occupation that didn't involve cleaning, if you can find one. The other thing we found that was highlighted in our project was choosing an appropriate coating for today's water-based finishes. The coating that lets us dial in the correct look and the feel and the durability of the factory coating. We saw also the necessity to be color smart. What do you do when you run out of color? Well, we covered that in a previous video, so look for that one where we actually discussed how to address the situation when we've already mixed a color, we've run out. How do we find that same color again? Also, we saw the importance of using materials, in this case, that are common to aircraft. They replaced material that was not material that's usually used in this aircraft. Wasn't such a big deal here in this plane. We've seen it in other places. For example, we had a glare shield that was covered with a heavier vinyl than usual, and it had a residue on it, and it was brought to me to clean the residue and to re-dye, and which I did, but then after a few days the residue reappeared. So there was something within the vinyl, some plasticizer or something, that continued to give us a problem. There is a material specifically used in aircraft to cover glare shields. It would be better to pick something that is used on a regular basis and that has a track record of success, rather than picking a new material with the prospect of possibly having a problem that we couldn't foresee. We saw also protocol broken in regards to this aircraft, and that's critical. Protocol is in place for a reason. And I would challenge whoever did this, he or she, whoever did this, I would challenge to find a file on that person. I would challenge you to find where they've signed all the appropriate paperwork and qualified to do this job. I would challenge you to find a burn certification for their work that qualifies them to do this. And you would think, well, we can just dye the seats. What's the need for the protocol? And the protocol might seem silly, but that's the reason that there's protocol, is because people think that a certain step is, or a certain requirement might be silly during a certain step, and so they would overlook it. Just for such silliness, that's why the protocol is in place, to make sure that you don't minimize, okay, that particular procedure. And so when protocol is broken in one area, it tends to get broken in other areas too. The other thing that this project showed us is that somebody misrepresented their service. This happens way too often in our industry, I'm sorry to say, but every jurisdiction has something on the books regarding misrepresentation of services. Okay, so it's either a misdemeanor crime, or it could be a civil matter, depending on the jurisdiction. Still, it's a serious matter. In fact, most of us in our industry, because we're repairing something already broken, we tend to undersell a little bit. We tend to position ourselves so that we don't have too high an expectation from the customer. It's better to undersell just a little bit. And I usually like to say that I aim for 100%, knowing I'm going to fall short a few percentage points, okay? But if I take that approach, then the general appearance is usually satisfactory. And one last thing, day one of our project here was also day one of my vacation. I was supposed to take some time off for my health and trying to reduce some of the stress. And instead I got dumped in my lap a project. It wasn't just a normal project, it required 4 times the work of any other project of this sort. So you can see the ramifications for not doing something correctly the first time. So anyway, what we did learn overall though is that we do have the tools, we do have the know-how to rectify any kind of given situation like this. And it was my privilege to just share that with you, because now you have the same tools and confidence that you can do a restoration on top of what somebody else has already done. And thanks for watching.